Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the first steps in a change to organ donor law. It'll be assumed you consent unless you actively opt out of the scheme. New council powers to run the buses. Local authorities will be given powers to improve provision on less profitable routes. Back to the climbing wall, we speak to the young record breaker who scaled the Old Man of Hoy to raise money to help his mum.
It was on this really sandy rock and my foot got onto a sandy bit and it just slipped and then I fell upside down and a bird nearly got sick on me.
Also in the programme, we're in Iraq for a special report on the Scottish troops training Iraqi security forces, still battling insurgent attacks.
Oh, must be out! It is out! Scotland have done it!
And after the biggest win in their history over England, Scotland's cricketers prepare to take on Pakistan. Good evening. Scotland has taken the first steps towards an opt-out system for organ donation. At present, you must opt into the system in order to donate your organs after you die. Under proposals launched at Holyrood today, it'll be assumed you're in favour of donation unless you've stated otherwise. Here's our health correspondent, Lisa Summers.
Let's have a look at your arm here.
Robert Kilpatrick is one of over 500 people in Scotland waiting for a transplant. As he waits, he spends much of his time at the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh.
This wasn't what we forecast for our retirement, you know, coming in here 3 days a week. Now, coming in here and get the best of treatment, but it would be nice, you know, to be free of it and get back to some normality again.
For now, you have to opt in to the organ donation scheme. The change will mean unless you opt out, medics will presume you've agreed to have your organs used. Families will still be consulted. So what do you think?
I think it's a great idea because there's so many people who would probably want to give their organs, haven't bothered to actually register.
I'm worried that maybe we would overlook the very human aspects of what surrounds death.
People have to opt out, well, they'll have to opt out, whereas at the moment I've opted in, so I don't mind handing over whatever I can hand over.
The switch has the backing of most of the medical profession.
Waiting time for a kidney donation this now is between 2 and 3 years. And then the other sad thing is that as people are on dialysis, they get frailer and frailer, and some people unfortunately never make it to getting a kidney transplant.
Scotland will follow Wales, who introduced this 3 years ago, but there are questions about whether it actually leads to more donors.
In countries like Wales, where the opt-out system has been present since December 2015, the evidence shows, and this is the latest evidence from 2018, that it really hasn't made a difference. So in a way we can ask ourselves why the Scottish Parliament is legalising in this area when it's not going to really make that much difference.
Scotland is already working to increase donor rates. Over the last 10 years, the number of transplants has gone up 78%. And the number of people who donated organs has gone up by 89%. But last year, that amounted to only 102 people.
The reality is that less than 1% of people die in circumstances where organ donation is suitable. So the hope is that by changing the system, it will encourage families to have conversations about the need for donation.
The government say this change in law is part of a package of measures. It still has to undergo parliamentary scrutiny before it can be enshrined in law. Lisa Summers, Reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Big changes to the way bus services are run have been set out by the Scottish Government. It's announced measures to give local authorities more power to improve bus provision and fill in gaps in service. Well, our transport correspondent David Henderson is at a bus station in Clydebank this evening. David, what's perceived to be the biggest problem with bus services at the moment?
Well, Jackie, in Scotland, bus travel is by far the most popular form of public transport. Far more people travel by bus than use any other form of public transport, but our bus service is in decline. The number of people travelling by bus is falling year on year, while at the same time fares continue to rise. So the Scottish Government is looking to solve that problem What they want to do is to stop bus companies from simply operating on the busiest, most profitable routes. And so what they're going to do is give powers to council to partner up with bus companies to spread out service and fill in gaps in the network. But as we've been finding out, many passengers here know that the service is far from perfect.
It's terrible, absolutely terrible. You can't get a bus for half an hour at least. You're sitting there waiting for a bus, no here.
Sometimes there is a hiccup or something like that, and other than that, it's all right, you know. It's ideal.
It's a good service, but it's quite dear.
What we need it for, it's good.
Like, it can take you from our house to Glasgow, but it's getting from like our house to like Drumchapel to Faithfully. There's no buses that way.
It's more the fact you get off one bus, then you have to wait maybe 20 minutes, half an hour sometimes to get the bus you need, your connecting bus.
Yeah.
David, what if the bus companies don't want to cooperate?
Well, the government set out plans to give councils much more drastic powers to run bus services themselves. It's something that already happens in Edinburgh and it works well there. They're also setting out plans to allow local authorities to run franchises, a bit like the way that they're run in London, where bus operators are kept on a very, very tight leash. Well, the government at this point in time sees these as really the last resort, really nuclear options which shouldn't be necessary, and they see the threat of that sort of action being the sort of thing that will force bus companies to cooperate and provide a more passenger-friendly service.
Thank you very much, David. Well, meanwhile, ScotRail has been named as one of the worst offending UK train companies for misleading passengers over their compensation rights. Consumer group Which said some operators were refusing to accept liability for expenses such as taxis when a train was cancelled. The Rail Delivery Group, which represents rail companies, said compensation payments had gone up 500% to £74 million in the last 5 years. Which named Cross Country, Grand Central, Greater Anglia, Heathrow Express and Stansted Express as the other main offenders. Detectives investigating the murder of a man in Angus want to trace the occupants of a black Range Rover. The vehicle was seen close to where Stephen Donaldson's body was discovered. The 27-year-old was found in a car park in the Canordy Nature Reserve near Kirriemuir last Thursday morning. Officers say he'd suffered a sustained and brutal attack. They also want to speak to 3 men seen in the area the night before. The Prime Minister is tonight addressing Conservative MPs in an attempt to avert Commons defeats on the centrepiece of the UK government's Brexit legislation. The EU withdrawal bill returns to the Commons tomorrow, with ministers intent on overturning most of the changes passed by peers, keen for Britain to stay closely aligned with the EU. The SNP say the legislation, in its present form, undermines devolution. Well, let's go to our Westminster correspondent, David Porter. David, we really are reaching a crucial stage in this process, aren't we?
Yes, we are, Jackie. In parliamentary terms, we're getting to the business end of this argument. Over the next 48 hours, I would imagine that the political mercury will climb significantly. The EU withdrawal bill is essentially all about putting the legislation in place that can allow Brexit to go ahead. And what will happen tomorrow and Wednesday over the next 48 hours, that the UK government will try and overturn changes on the trading relationship, whether we are in a customs union or not, and will try to get its way on how much sway and how much ability MPs will have to decide what happens on the final deal. I think it is an indication of quite how seriously the UK government are taking this, that the Prime Minister has tonight gone to Parliament to say to her MPs, please support me on this.
And David, on the other matter, is there any suggestion of a compromise between the UK and Scottish governments on the devolution aspect of this?
Absolutely none whatsoever. Last month, the Scottish Parliament refused to give its backing to the EU withdrawal bill because it said it did down devolution essentially and it reduced the power of the Scottish Parliament. Now, against that, the UK government says, no, that's not the case, but what business needs is continuity and certainty what will happen when Brexit goes ahead after we leave the European Union. I would imagine over the next 48 hours there's going to be some pretty fractious debate rates, and all the signs are that some of those votes could be very close indeed.
David Porter, thank you. A flagship Scottish Government policy to almost double paid-for nursery hours for 3- and 4-year-olds is at risk, according to the National Day Nurseries Association. It's warned many members surveyed are worried there's not enough funding to avoid a crisis. The Scottish Government says it's agreed an almost £1 billion package with councils to offer fair and sustainable funding for childcare providers. Katie Hunter has more.
Do you think the caterpillars have been eating these leaves?
Yeah.
We've got a lot.
Learning about the environment and numbers. These 3- and 4-year-olds are currently entitled to 600 paid-for nursery hours a year. From 2020, the Scottish Government plans to almost double that. But some private nursery providers are worried it's not financially viable.
People are very scared. They're scared for their business. They're scared for their staff's jobs. They're also very frustrated, and I would say a big feeling of frustration, and that also many partners are ready to walk away.
A survey of more than 200 private nurseries suggests less than a third are likely to offer the Scottish Government's recommended free hours. That's down from 51% last year. More than 3/4 said current funding for 3- and 4-year-olds doesn't cover their costs.
I think these findings are quite worrying because, especially at a time when the Scottish Government is expecting to expand the offer to 1140 hours from 2020. We have been carrying out these surveys for the past 5 years, but this is the worst we have seen in terms of the lack of confidence for nursery sector.
The NDNA warns without extra funding, the requirement to pay staff the living wage will cripple nurseries. The Scottish Government says the survey was carried out before it agreed to a package of nearly £1 billion with the local authority umbrella organisation COSLA.
The money that we are now agreeing to make available is higher than the Scottish Government originally said would be available, so we've taken account of a number of the things that have been said to us, and part of that agreement is recognising the importance of paying proper rates to nurseries in the private and third sectors.
But some private nursery providers say more funding is needed now. Without it, they warn the Scottish Government's policy on extra nursery hours is at risk. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland.
It's just after 20 to 7. A reminder of tonight's main story. The first step in a change to the organ donor system. It'll be assumed you consent unless you actively opt out of the scheme. And still to come, back to the climbing wall, we speak to the young record breaker who scaled the Old Man of Hoy to raise money to help his mum. And how's that? After their historic win against England, Scotland's cricketers get set to take on Pakistan. Labour insists anti-racism investigations are continuing in the party after the Transport Minister Humza Yousaf complained about a lack of action in his case. 3 months after Mr Yousaf accused a Labour councillor of Islamophobia, Labour has yet to contact key witnesses. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
On the eve of this anti-racism rally in Glasgow in March, Labour suspended a councillor in Dumfries and Galloway. They moved against Jim Dempster, who apologised for saying nobody would have seen Humza Yousaf, the Transport Minister, under his burqa.
Prepared to pursue to the very end justice and equality.
At the time, the Labour leader ordered an investigation.
There should be zero tolerance for racism and Islamophobia. And I am angry that it still goes on. And I am impatient to do everything in my power to stop it.
3 months on, Labour's investigation is still at a preliminary stage, and the party has yet to contact key witnesses to ask for evidence. The Transport Minister expected faster progress.
And this shouldn't have been a long investigation in the case of Jim Dempster. He admitted making the remarks to me. So I thought this would have been the quickest investigation, frankly, in history. But in fact, 3 months on, and not a single thing has been done. And when Richard Lerner says he's going to tackle this problem and have a zero-tolerance approach, I'm afraid his deeds do not match his rhetoric.
No one from Labour was available for interview today, but a spokesperson for the party said investigations into alleged misconduct are continuing, and as a result it would be inappropriate to comment further at this time. In February, MP Hugh Gaffney was sent for diversity training after apologising for making offensive remarks about LGBT and Chinese people. In January, MSP Anna Sarwar complained about alleged racism by another Labour councillor who has denied wrongdoing. That case has yet to go to a UK party hearing. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland.
Edward Mills was back at school today after an unusual weekend for an 8-year-old. He became the youngest climber to scale the Old Man of Hoy. He did it to raise money for a cancer charity. His mother, Becky, has terminal breast cancer. The family said the best thing about the day was that she was able to watch his amazing achievement. They've been speaking to Ian McInnes.
Rising like a giant out of the sea, the old man played host to a very wee man's challenge.
Take as long as you like, mate. This is your day.
The youngest person ever to climb the stack was back to reality today at home. The training goes on with Mum still watching over him. Her illness, one of the prime motivations for taking on the challenge.
I wanted to help cancer people, and I was raising money to help them to get better.
He's since raised over £30,000 for charity and captured the imagination of many more. But there was a real concern his mum wouldn't be there to see the feat.
It was very emotional. I think one of the worst things about having cancer is that, and being given a terminal diagnosis, is that you're not going to be around to see your children grow up and maybe graduate or get married and things. So to be here to see him do something phenomenal was really very special.
An emotional moment, but Edward seems to be taking things in his stride.
Was it not a bit scary?
A little bit. I was on this really sandy rock and my foot got onto a sandy bit and it just slipped. And then I fell upside down and a bird nearly got sick on me.
I think when we were walking over there, you could see him subdued, possibly worried. There was a lot riding on it. There was a lot of expectation for him. I think we wouldn't have started out not thinking he could do it, but for him to actually do it, it's great. And we always said to him that it's okay if you only get part way, it's not a problem. The fact that we're just having a go, just do the best you can, and he did the best he could, and that was getting to the top.
And Edward says he's aiming to climb higher and higher. The physical and emotional challenge left him on top of the world. Ian McInnes, reporting Scotland in Caithness.
Hundreds of Scottish troops are once again serving in Iraq. The soldiers have been based in areas that were held by the so-called Islamic State. Their job has been to train the Iraqi security forces who are still battling against insurgent attacks. Our reporter Cameron Buttle has been with them.
A sentry post on a 10-mile perimeter fence manned by the Black Watch. Inside Al-Assad Air Base, around 150 miles west of Baghdad, more than 3,000 people from a dozen nations are here to support the Iraqi security forces.
You learned all your English just watching films?
I see a lot of movies.
You see a lot of movies to be that good?
And that includes 300 Scots. They're not here in a combat role, they've been training Iraqi units. Many of these men have already fought against ISIS or Daesh, but they still lack basic military skills.
So the fight's not over by any means. It's been a really impressive campaign that the Iraqis have led to clear their land of Daesh. And actually Daesh have lost about 98% of land they once held. So it's been hugely successful. But I would categorise it as Daesh being defeated but not completely beaten. They still exist and they still present a very credible threat.
The Scots troops have been training more than 1,000 Iraqi border guards. And they say that these men here are highly motivated in learning about the basic infantry drills and battlefield medicine. Because after they finish their training here, they're going straight to the Syrian border. At night, coalition flights crisscross the sky above Iraq. The Scots have been deployed to bases all over the country. This detachment of Royal Highland Fusiliers is heading to Erbil in the far northeast. Watching from the high ground, officers observe the final course exercise of the Regional Guards Brigade, part of the renowned Peshmerga forces.
The biggest progression comes in the very basics of soldiering, so
You'll see now that they'll adopt fire positions that previously they wouldn't have chosen to adopt. They'll react to the enemy fire quicker than what they reacted first time round. They'll move across the ground more tactically than what they would before.
Some soldiers here have been selected for advanced training. Soldiers like Sangar Gadir. He's been trained to become an instructor himself.
It's nice feeling when you are thinking you'll be an instructor in the future and you're gonna have your own students and you are teaching them for the future. It's nice feeling.
They've never done anything like this before, so they do find it quite tough, and because of that we give them a lot of breaks, because it's a lot of theoretical work they need to put in, a lot of writing and studying, so it's something that they've not done because a lot of them don't have that background of being at school.
The Scots have been deployed as part of Operation Shader, the UK commitment to the Iraqi forces. So far, 75,000 have been trained.
We're now moving into a phase of sustainable development. It's about quality over quantity. It's about delivering train-the-trainer packages so that the Iraqis can deliver this training long after we've left their country.
But no one knows when that might be. It's been 15 years since the coalition forces invaded Iraq. It's highly likely that more Scots will be deployed here in the future. Cameron Buttle reporting Scotland, Al Assad.
Sport now. And if you're feeling a bit dejected by Scotland's absence from the World Cup, worry not. There is a new team to get behind. Scotland's cricketers, they're doing us proud. Yesterday, they made history by beating the team ranked best in the world for the one-day game, England. Here's Rona McLeod.
Oh, must be out. It is out! Scotland have done it. What a victory this is for Scotland, the greatest in their cricketing history.
Wonderful scenes, crowd invasion.
Time to celebrate on the pitch and then off. A Scotland result like never before.
The dressing room it was special. That's what you play the game for two things. One, for how the crowd reacted at the end of the game. It showed a real passion for the game in Scotland, and two, getting back into that dressing room and celebrating the success of what this team had just done.
Well, 24 hours later, here at the Grange, the magnitude of the achievement is sinking in.
Yeah, absolutely sensational and very, very proud of what the guys have achieved in beating the #1 team in the world. To wake up this morning and realise that fact is very, very special and something we will certainly savour.
And the Scotland skipper has revealed that before their historic win, they knew a great performance was coming.
The team had been bubbling on that performance for some time. We played some really good cricket for the last couple of years, and that is just everything coming together. It was a great day, and the guys did everything they needed to do, and most importantly, they managed the pressure in the right times.
And they have to do it all again tomorrow and Wednesday, a 2020 clash against the might of Pakistan. Scotland savouring success against England today, back to business tomorrow. Rona McLeod, reporting Scotland, The Grange.
Well, football now, and despite not making the World Cup, Scottish football has its highest profile in years. Well, so says the new St Mirren manager, Alan Stubbs. He's been talking to Cerdan Idzan.
Back in Scottish football with St Mirren back in the Premiership. The former Hibs boss says it's too early to set targets, but not as chairman. Could the runaway winners of last season's championship be top 6 in the top flight?
I think it's very possible. I think clubs that come up do tend to get a bounce. It's not something I'm expecting or putting pressure on the manager to achieve, but there's no reason why we couldn't. I look at football as an entertainment industry. It's not about finishing 7th, 8th, 9th. I'd rather finish 10th and enjoy my football than finish 8th and be bored to tears every week.
Boredom in Scottish football's highly unlikely, of course, given the appointment of a former Liverpool and England captain as the new manager at Rangers.
The away dugout here at St Mirren Park will feature some stellar names next season as visiting managers, including Brendan Rodgers, Steve Clarke and, of course, Steven Gerrard. Quite a prospect then for Alan Stubbs in his first job as a top-flight coach.
I think it's brilliant. You know, I think right now, I think Scottish football is talked about more than what it has been for a number of years now. You know, the profile has certainly been taken up to another level. I think Brendan was the start of it. It can only be good. It can only help, you know, ultimately and all from a financial point of view.
Lift off then for Scottish football, and with Stubbs at the helm, Saints fans could be in for an entertaining journey. Kerdy Nidsan, reporting Scotland.
Now we're going to put a positive spin on the weather. Good news for gardeners, Christopher?
Yes, plenty of rain on the way. Thank you very much, Jackie. Hello there. It's been a quiet start to the week weather-wise, but change afoot, certainly midweek. There's been a few showers around today, and those with us for a time yet, perhaps drifting south in towards the central belt for a time, and then overnight it's dry, fairly cloudy, temperatures around 9 to 12 Celsius with light winds. So to tomorrow, and there's a small ridge of high pressure keeping things settled, but weather fronts behind me there just waiting their turn. But Tuesday looks all right. It's dry, it's cloudy, bit of a grey start, but like today, it should improve, albeit slowly, with that cloud thinning and breaking, some sunshine coming through, certainly across central and western parts by the afternoon. Always a little more cloud towards the Hebrides and across eastern Scotland, but for central and west Scotland, by mid-afternoon, temperatures up to 20 degrees with some sunshine. 1 or 2 showers around, slow moving but isolated, and in the east with that thicker cloud, just a touch cooler. The winds coming in from the north, generally light, although a bit more of a breeze up towards Shetland and here coming in from the northwest. Rest of the afternoon tomorrow into the evening, the showers with us for a time before fading away. It's then dry. Now, we need to talk about Wednesday because low pressure is on its way in, and that's going to give us something totally different compared with the last few weeks. It's going to be quite unsettled, some heavy rain and some high winds. But it starts okay. Here's Wednesday morning. It's dry, some early sunshine, but through the day you'll notice the clouds thickening and outbreaks of rain, certainly affecting the west coast and the Hebrides. But central and eastern Scotland on Wednesday probably staying dry, temperatures mid to high teens. And then it gets interesting. Wednesday evening and night, that wet weather crossing the country. We've not seen this for a while. Look at that. All the blues on the chart there indicating a really wet night, windy too, strong perhaps gale force from the southwest, and then clearing through to leave Thursday a blustery day with showers. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. The discount retailer Pound World has become the latest name on the high street to go into administration after talks with a potential buyer at the weekend failed to produce a deal. It means more than 5,000 jobs are at risk at the company's 335 stores. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the late bulletin at 10:30. Join me for that if you can. Until then, from all the team, good evening.